Curtis Valentine here, founder of Real Men Teach, and you are listening to Ed Up, Accelerated Excellence.
This episode of Ed Up Accelerated Excellence is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of Ed Up Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EDUPXE15OFF. Check the show notes for more information or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
Are you an educational leader or organization seeking innovation or just a new perspective? Then look no further. Accelerated Excellence Consulting is dedicated to offering support to educational leaders and their organizations to meet their full potential for excellence. Services include strategic planning and problem solving, continuous improvement expertise in areas such as assessment and accreditation, and professional development, empowering leaders, individuals, and groups for personal growth for organizational excellence. To learn more, find us online at xeconsulting.org. That's xeconsulting.org. Welcome to Ed Up Accelerated Excellence, the podcast for the advancement of educational excellence and equity. And today's guest is Nicholas Hartlep. He is the Robert Charles Billings Endowed Chair in Education at Berea College, where he has served as chair for the Education Studies Department since 2019. He is also the author of the book, Student Loan Debt as a Wicked Problem, published by DO Press in 2022. And we're going to talk a bit about the book. So, Dr. Hartlep, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, please introduce yourself to the Ed Up Accelerated Excellence community, giving voice to your name as only you can.
Yeah, so like you said in the intro, my name's Nicholas Hartlep, and I serve as the Robert Charles Billings Endowed Chair at Berea College. Berea College is a work college, so it's kind of funny we're talking about student debt, and I work at a work college, but work colleges are unique. The students there do work on campus, and their financial models, at least the federally designated work colleges, they draw on funds from the federal government, as well as a lot of times their Pell Grants, and then endowment money and scholarships. So good to be here. I've always wanted to be on Ed Up, so I'm glad that we're having this conversation.
Hey, we are glad to have you. So let's talk. So thank you for that brief overview about Berea College, because that does make it unique as a work college. I don't know if there are any others in the nation. Are there any that you can recall?
Yeah, so actually in Kentucky, I live in Lexington, Kentucky. Alice Lloyd College in Pippa Passes is a work college. There are about 10. There's what's called the Work College Consortium, which is a consortia of work colleges. But there are some other work colleges like Warren Wilson College, Bethany Global University, Blackburn College. So there are quite a few. There's one in Ohio as well, Antioch College.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So you're in the Education Studies Department. So can you tell us about the unique value proposition that educator preparation holds there at Berea that may set it apart from its peers?
Yeah, there's so much. It's so easy to talk about and answer these questions, right? Only not only because I work there, but I'm actually writing another book that looks at work colleges. However, the book looks at work colleges and how they're unique and special and how they can meet a need in the current moment. And so the value proposition at Berea colleges, there's this kind of expression that I like. If you can afford to go there, you can attend. And so it's very much an accessibility and access institution, one that many, 99% of the students receive Pell. They're Pell eligible. Last I saw, there was a statistic that it's the number one college in the United States. I think Howard University was second, meaning in terms of the percentage students that are Pell eligible that it enrolls. But besides the uniqueness of being a labor college, a work college, my department does things such as pay for the students to take their tests, pay their test fees. So if you go to, the University of Kentucky, they would not be paying for their tests, right? Background checks. We have an endowed scholarship, or not a scholarship, a fund, an endowed fund where the benefactor left money for graduating seniors to take a vacation.
Oh, wow.
And you might say, oh, so the students get paid, they have funds to go on a vacation. Well, yeah. And in the most simplest sense of the word, yes. But that comes from the understanding that people who have, are resource poor don't go on vacations. Mm-hmm. Some of those college students, it might be their first time on an airplane if air travel is necessary to go on that vacation, quote unquote. And they've done things like California, San Francisco, New York. One time they went to Puerto Rico for that trip. And so, that's just a few stories to answer your question. What makes Berea Ed Studies unique? There's certainly more. I think of the origin of Berea College, the people who have passed through it, the luminaries, the alums like Carter G. Woodson, graduated with a bachelor's from the institution. Bell Hooks, she's also passed away, but has an institute. And so these are educators, philosophers, ed philosophers, and it's remarkable, right? Just had dinner with the director of the Carter G. Woodson Center. Her name is Dr. Jessica Clanderud. Mm-hmm. And I told her, I said, does it escape you that you are directing Carter G. Woodson Center? And she's like, no, Nicholas, isn't it crazy? I mean, we read about this man, his work, right? The miseducation of the Negro. And so it is sort of, how do I say, sometimes you can forget it has a long historical pattern. And let's talk about the first coeducational interracial college of the South.
Yeah.
It's named in the Supreme Court decision on Brown versus Board of Education. Brown 1, not Brown 2, but Brown 1 as a footnote. I think 27. I don't know the number of the footnote on the paper. I only know this because I'm reading it for the book I'm researching. But yeah, it's a very unique place, to say the least.
But I think you make a very good point about how when you're surrounded by these uniqueness that it seems normal to you, we forget to tell the story to others, to inspire others, and also to help others to perhaps want to join forces in support of the great work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be honest, it was a story I didn't quite know when I applied. The only reason I had applied, and I'm writing this in the book, was because for one of my other books, Student Loan Debt, published by Routledge, one of the chapters was on work colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had discovered that work colleges on the whole graduate their students with less debt than most institutions. So I said, I'm onto something here. And it caused me to look into them more. And I actually wrote that book proposal, and I was about to take a sabbatical. And lo and behold, I applied to Berea College. I saw they had a vacancy, and I told my wife, yeah, I'll apply. I probably won't get a job offer or anything. And I got an interview and then on campus, and it moved very quickly. It was a late search. I share all of that because I'm coming full circle. Now I have a year-long sabbatical at Berea, and I have the ability to finish that project. Now it's a little delayed, but I'm so blessed to be able to finish it. And I didn't know about it because actually I didn't even know about work colleges. I started with Cooper Union. As researchers, we have inquiry, and it just takes us all across. And it's I think that's what research should do. You have this curiosity. We don't know the answers to the questions we're asking. We're genuinely interested, and the questions and their answers can help. They help people, or they help institutions. And so for me, it was like, hey, student loan debt is a problem. Why do some institutions graduate students with less debt than others? And Berea is really unique too, because it's such a highly ranked institution, educating largely first generation students. And so it's highly unique. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but I think you're really speaking to the power of when we find synergy between scholarship, teaching, and service in some way. And I'm going to add to this advocacy/leadership, that you find this really neat amalgamation of sort of how you say your research now influences your ability to land a job in a particular location or an environment that also informs your research.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really nice to do that. So let's talk a bit about your book, because you've talked about Berea being a work college. So you talk about the high number of students who receive federal aid in order to attend. I did hear you talk about the graduation rate, so I think that might be an area for continuous improvement. But student loan debt remains a major issue in public policy and part of the ongoing conversation among elected officials, educators, and families. So what piqued your interest in the subject of and the development of your book, this idea of student loan debt as a wicked problem?
Absolutely. I had done, and I forget it, and I'm sincere, because you forget the timeline. I've done like 25 or more books, and so I believe the neoliberal book that we wrote and edited was first.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll start there. And so as an author and editor, as a researcher, at least I think of how can I make a contribution, right? Because we need to push the needle. We need to push the boundary of the research. And so I stumbled upon the framework of a wicked problem and tame problems, Riddle and Weber's work, and that was in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, this framework, this theorization could be applied to student debt. And then I noticed there are 10 tenets, principles. And I thought, oh, that'd be interesting. it could be a 10 chapter book. Each chapter look at a tenant and apply it to the student debt problem. And it happened to be that it just worked out so seamless. The challenge though in that volume is, and I'll try to distill it. Wicked problems in some ways by definition then are unsolvable compared to tame problems that you can tame. Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to do a book that gave us a new language to better understand why student debt is so misunderstood. It is so complex. A simple thing like a loan, right? And so that's what led me to use that framework. And I'm proud of that book. I think that it at least introduces people to alternative theories to use. There is this quote in one of the chapters that I used, and I came across it in other readings I did, and it kind of boils down to this. There are some robbers out in the desert. Mm-hmm. They see a caravan coming towards the city, and one of the robbers says, let's go and steal all of their possessions, and we'll get rich, because it appeared like they had a lot of resources. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. Instead, they're going to need water, and we're going to build walls around the well in our city and charge them money for the water. And it's kind of like a crazy metaphor, but sort of like debt. When they're going to make money keeping these people indebted, right? They're never going to own that water. They're going to need water to survive. And so student loans, in some ways, I would argue, are the lifeline for a lot of people to access higher education, because no one can really pay the amount of money college tuition costs these days, right? Yeah. And that's kind of how my mind works. I think of this sort of through a conflict lens, a critical lens. So I'm a conflict theorist, and I see inequity and I see power analysis, and it just spoke to me, that quote.
Yeah. So I like how this idea of teasing out those tenets. These tenets often come with some contradictions, So I think in chapter 7, the unique and unjust U.S. student debt crisis talks about this position of education for economic development versus looking at education for sustainable development for all. So I think you're right around this kind of conflict, and how we can look at the same situation from multiple perspectives, whether we're talking about capitalistic, one that advances capitalism, or one that advances democracy, or the intersection of the two, and what tensions that brings about trying to resolve both. So how do you make money, but also engage in democratic practices? So we're speaking with Nicholas Hartlep, who is the Robert Charles Billings Endowed Chair in Education at Berea College. And Nicholas, if you don't mind, thinking about your book, I would like to read a passage from the book, which lays out a proposal for addressing the U.S. student loan debt. In this case, it focuses on debt for teachers. And I believe this is in your first chapter. So a simpler approach would redirect the money for various loan forgiveness programs to a federal income tax credit for teachers. Lawmakers could tailor the tax credit in various ways, such as limiting the number of years teachers could claim it, or limiting eligibility to teachers in schools serving predominantly low-income students. Such credits could do all the things loan forgiveness programs should, such as boost teachers' pay, offer an incentive to stay in the profession, and transfer federal resources to local schools. And they would free teachers from complicated competing rules and regulations. So what would you add to this proposal as written that you wrote a few years ago, particularly given the current political climate regarding the federal management of student loan debt for teachers?
What I see with the student loan debt problem now is with Trump and this new big, beautiful bill and these changes, it's going to have damaging effects for higher education, because one thing that will be difficult is it expands the time for forgiveness, right? So typically it's been 10 years, but some of the proposals I'm seeing is 30 years. That's the mortgage. That's what people pay their houses.
Yep.
And that's a metaphor or a comparison that people have been making, that people do have like a mortgage payment for their student loan debt. So this is where, Jacob, my work is constantly looking for new innovative solutions. I think higher education, we slap a new bottle, but we have the same old wine in it. And so one innovative thing that I've seen that I really like is what New Mexico has done. They've created sort of like an endowed scholarship, an endowed trust, where they've had budget surpluses and they've stockpiled that money, and they've let good mathematics compound interest and time and to help, right? And that's a unique program, right? So if you stockpile enough money and you get enough return, that nest egg won't go away. It'll continue to expand, just like the Ivy Leagues and other larger institutions. But another is, I think the neoliberal logic, the market logic that we use, the business rhetoric we use around higher education is part and parcel to the problem. And debt is a serious problem. I think that is bipartisan. Consumer debt, that's a problem, right? If you get underwater, you can't really come back from that. And so thinking about even the cost of higher education, like why does higher education continue to rise? Why are states disinvesting and not giving money to state colleges and universities and community colleges? That's a problem. And it boils down to many things, but one thing that's very damaging is the idea that the risk is personalized to the individual, that you're going to really have to take a risk and bet on yourself. And we don't view higher education as a right. That if we understood that a more educated citizenry is a healthier citizenry, that there are spillover effects, that they'll make more responsible decisions about their health, nutrition, all their well-being, that helps the economy, that good jobs helps the economy. And so there, again, that's why I think new frameworks are so useful. And the last thought I have around it is, now it's personalized again for me, because I'm about to, I paid off my student loans, but now I'm about to send my first child to college, and she will have loans herself, and my wife and I will have parent loans and private loans to help assist her in financing her education. Time will tell. She's going to try to go to med school. I never went to med school, but So it's challenging for sure. And I'm worried. I'm genuinely worried for our youngsters, but then also they're, not to be ageist, there are a lot of older people who carry student loan debt, who are in a tough situation.
Thank you for listening to EdUp Accelerated Excellence. This episode is supported by the 2.0 conferences to be held in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, April 7th through 9th, 2026. Business leaders, educators, healthcare experts, marketing and tech professionals, and founding entrepreneurs are welcome to take part. Reserve your space today and receive a 15% discount courtesy of EdUp Accelerated Excellence with the code EDUPXE15OFF. That's EdUPXE15OFF. Check out the details in the show notes or learn more and register online at the2conf.com. That's the2conf.com with the code EDUPXE15OFF.
Are you an educational leader or organization seeking innovation or just a new perspective? Then look no further. Accelerated Excellence Consulting is dedicated to offering support to educational leaders and their organizations to meet their full potential for excellence. Services include strategic planning and problem solving, continuous improvement expertise in areas such as assessment and accreditation, and professional development, empowering leaders, individuals, and groups for personal growth for organizational excellence. To learn more, find us online at xeconsulting.org. That's xeconsulting.org. So this book is very unique in that it also draws on international comparison of student loan debt. So can you share with us in brief what you learned about that international comparison beyond student loan debt beyond the U.S.?
Yeah, I think of some of the authors. It's been a while, but like thinking of Pilar Mendoza and Linda Coco and other scholars that I've worked with on student loan debt. We put in that chapter to talk about models outside of the United States, and so models that education was more socialized or more viewed as a right and or a responsibility. At that time, I know it's changed since, but at the time of this volume, there were countries that had more affordable education, more investment by their national governments, and different models. I'm currently teaching a class right now. It's really unique. It's a research class with 6 high school students from across the globe. A couple from China, one from Egypt, one student from California. And it's really interesting when we talk about, why are you in this program as a high school student? And many of them are high performing students who are trying to build their resume and their college admission because they're seeking selective institutions. And this is a way to demonstrate, because it's college level, it's very rigorous, and they publish their papers. And there are scholarships for this program, but there again, I think of this program, or I think of your question in this way of competition, whether it's global competition or national competition. If it's trying to vie to apply to somewhere else, there are times when some people I know have studied, they're Americans, U.S. citizens, but they've gone overseas for their education through different programs like Erasmus in Spain or different things in the UK. And it just makes me think about I know the contexts are different, the geopolitical nature is different, but we in the United States, I don't believe we have the best model, right? And that's, people, politicians and educators and researchers have proposed different things, like expanding high school. Instead of 12th grade, make 2 more, 14, and then, right? Free public college, free community college, Ultimately, as I see it, going back to the conflict theorization, is education is not created equal, and institutions are not created equal. Why else would some people really push so hard and invest so much money in trying to pursue an Ivy League education? Well, we know why. Because the risk is high and the reward is high. Because if you go to an institution like that, it opens up doors to powerful people. And it signals that you're important. But I would argue work colleges like Berea College also signal things too. And if you can graduate with little to no debt and your first job, right, you can make money and live and save instead of spend, that's a good thing too. And so the learning while you're earning and working while you're learning, it's centralized. It's more than just labor. It's actually a pedagogical way to learn of various things. When you look at those other countries, some have national testing that really is high stress, and depending on how you perform on that test will really place you in a certain track. Some of those other countries, though, also have apprenticeship models where you can make a very solid living. And so here in the United States, even plumbing or some of the more service jobs, welding, don't require perhaps so much training as a 4-year, but you could still be very lucrative. And we need welders, right? And I think nowhere did this become clearer than the COVID pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
With supply chain and certain sectors. Again, I go back to, this is why these conversations are so wicked in some ways, because everyone has their own orientation and belief that, hey, we can solve the problem if we do this. But all of those responses have underlying model assumptions, right? And it's really crazy to me in the United States, we don't really have a model assumption of humanity, like some of the other countries, like paid time off or paternity and maternal, leave if you have a baby, right? We don't take care of our people. We're unhealthy, we're stressed, and education is somehow sold as this gateway. Invest in yourself. And so I don't want to sound negative, but it just makes me a little angry.
Well, it's interesting because you said a wicked problem is one that really can't be solved. And, that's a very interesting concept and somewhat, moribund. I mean, it's a bit pessimistic because the reality is, as you said, and I know it's complicated because we have a differential in power structures of those who, and we're driven by a market-based model. So the idea is to make money. The idea is profits and losses, and that also brings us this other dynamics as winners and losers. And it's so ingrained in us. As long as we're a winner, anyone who's a loser, we've sold ourselves this narrative that it's your fault that you're the loser because we believe in this rugged individualism. So when and the reality of the student loan debt is we're really talking about how to provide access for those that are under-resourced. So we're not talking about student loan debt for the 1, 2, or 3% population that it really doesn't matter where they go to school, if they go to school at all. But in terms of financial resources. So institutions like Berea, where you are absolutely vital for populations that are thriving for or desiring of and talented individuals, motivated, but may not have the opportunity. And so access in that case is really important. So we're talking about an economic issue that largely affects a sector of the U.S. population. To pick things up a bit, for parents and folks contemplating the value of higher education, and with student loan debt weighing on their minds, I know you talked about it for your daughter who is about to go to college. What counsel might you outline for them to make an informed decision regarding student loan debt? I know your book looks at sort of those contradictions and challenges, but what bright spots of hope, what can families think about when it comes to student loan debt?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Jacob. For my current book that I'm working on right now, there's one new kind of, it's a financial product that colleges are adopting some. It's called an LRAP, a loan assistance, loan repayment rather, loan LRAP, loan repayment assistance plan or program. So LRAP. And it kind of boils down in the most simplistic way that, you graduate from an institution that is part of an LRAP. First, you enter into a college, you apply, they have an LRAP, or you don't. You find out they do, but when you're admitted, you become part of the LRAP. Mm-hmm. When you graduate and you have the LRAP, what happens is if you don't find a job that pays as well as you were thinking, that the institution pays some of your loans for you as an assistance to make up the difference until you maybe get a promotion or maybe you move out of that sector. Two things I'd like to say in complete transparency. One is I am not an expert about LRAPs, but my initial hunch, and that's what I'm researching now, is they're limited insofar as it really protects super like a small amount of people, and for the math to actually work, they're very limited cases. But in theory, on paper, it does provide assurances to certain sectors of the population who apply to colleges, and they're worried. They're worried of taking out an immense amount of loans and how will they pay it off. And so it pertains more to like fields like low pay fields, maybe teaching, counseling, maybe something like that. So that's kind of a new thing, quote unquote. Again, my critique is that these products are being created by enrollment management companies and certain, groups and investors. And so it's a financial product, right? And so when you think about the housing market and derivatives and different bundling things, it's a financial tool. And if they are new, we don't necessarily know the impact they'll have. But on paper, they're very sexy and shiny. And they're they can be used to enroll students, right? Enrollment management companies. So I see that as a danger. And it's again, using neoliberal logic to counterweight neoliberal problems. I think there are some revolutionary things that I'd like to point out that are sort of similar in work colleges. For instance, at Berea, there's this great commitment on simplicity of living. And I think that is biblical in some ways, but as a Christian person, I think that really speaks to it. Living within your means. People, when you make more money, then you spend more money. And, it's a capitalist project, right? And so little things like if you can reuse something, you reuse it. If you can go to a thrift store, go to a thrift store, right? Buy something gently used. Some people might say, well, that's not for me. I think that there's some good there. And then lastly, I think in a similar way in the corporate world, if we are going to use business logic, I think that we should think about things like B Corps, these, B corporations and how they move through the world. I think that is something that higher ed could do. Like how, or at least ask itself, how could we have a B Corp kind of approach to education?
You have this book, which was published in 2022, Student Loan Debt as a Wicked Problem. Yep. You're now part of the EPFP fellowship program. What else can we look for from Nicholas Hartlep or your work at Berea College that the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community might engage with you or your institution?
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Well, first off, I would encourage them to look at my 2 YouTube channels, Nicholas Hartlep, and then the other is Cutting Edge U, which I'd love to do some cross-pollination with EdUp, Accelerated Excellence, get you on my YouTube channel. That YouTube channel, we talk about all things P20 education. The other way is LinkedIn. That's my newest platform that I'm noticing a lot of people are on, and you can find me on social media there. I think you'll have links to like Twitter and Blue Sky, Facebook, my website, nicholashartlep.com. I think I'm very inspired by folks like you, Dr. Easley, doing your podcast for consistent time. It's really important. And bottom line is there is so much important work that we all can work together in collaboration. We don't need to be exclusionary. So if any listener has, thoughts to engage with me or Dr. Easley or bring us both together, anybody's names, I would love it. Right now, I am about to take a year-long research sabbatical. I know it's a podcast, you can't see my smile, but right now
I can see your smile, and I'm
jealous. Oh Lord, I am so blessed. I am so excited.
One of those.
I am so excited, and there is going to be some big news dropping here shortly. It's embargoed, but when I announce that, it's going to be phenomenal. So a lot of good things happening. But it's just been an honor to be on EdUp. I know I've been wanting to be on here a while, and I'm glad it worked out finally.
So we appreciate it, and we look forward to ways of collaborating. So for the EdUp Accelerated Excellence community, when you go to our website, edupxe.com, you will be able to see the extended bio for Dr. Nicholas Hartlep. Well, Nicholas Hartlep, thank you for this opportunity to learn with and from you here at EdUp Accelerated Excellence.
Thank you for engaging with EdUp Accelerated Excellence, a member of the EdUp Experience Network of educational podcasts. You can find this and other episodes on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Radio, and other outlets where you listen to your favorite podcasts. If you like this episode, don't forget to follow us and share within your network. To leave a comment or suggest a guest, contact us online at edupxe.com.